Relationship.
Next, Dexter.
We've learned about the panorama project and some of the history.
Alright, that's good. I need my mic so we can hear you guys. Okay. Alright, here we go next. Sal.
We need to be careful when we make a deal with bank.
Okay. No leverage risk.
What?
No leverage, like they use that. They want to buy the property and they want to be the builder and all this stuff. They try to make less risk.
Okay.
That the land was used with all cash.
Good.
Okay.
To be a builder is kind of complicated.
Okay. Sebastian.
Recourse loans versus non-recourse.
Okay. He didn't tell us what. There's still time for you, Neosha.
There's a hell of a lot that goes into development.
Okay. Here's about first.
Deficiency judgment is a way to get your money back after
Who's
recourse.
you that gets your money back?
The bank.
The bank.
Yes.
Right. The lender would get it back through a deficiency judgment.
Oh, she wants the bell again. All right, gotcha.
I learned how to start off developing.
Okay.
Small scale. I learned today that it's very important to understand the submarkets and to make sure you follow the critical path, because at some point or not, if you start delaying and things like that, it's gonna damage like the construction owner in some sort of fashion.
If you're in the position, try to shoot for a recourse loan because you get better terms.
Panorama is going to be the tallest building in Florida or South of here.
Alrighty. Keep going. This is the hot seat. They have to think fast. So recap.
I like the concept of building and holding and keeping it for you and.
Okay.
There are two things in life that don't pay: crime and personal guarantors. The hollow philosophy: one building at a time.
With substantial equity, a developer is able to have a second strategy in case plan A doesn't work out.
You can have a second strategy anyway, just with some thinking, right? Yeah.
Obviously.
Right. Here we go.
You can see Bimini from the 83rd floor.
Okay.
How at least to exit strategies.
Mario.
Read and understand all the contract.
Every new acquisition, you have to form a new corporation.
They want a single purpose LLC. Yeah.
Single purpose entity, yeah.
Don't do what's already been done.
That was his quote. Don't do what's already been done. Andre took notes.
I learned that the devil is in the details. We have to pay attention to everything. That's the professor's quote.
Thank you. You can always quote your professor.
Do as much in-house as you can. Like have an architecture in-house.
I don't know. Did you say do as much in-house as you can? I don't know.
They're just set up that way.
It's wise to do a lot in-house.
Besides checking on zoning, you need to get the FAA approval to build that height.
If you're going that high, yeah. Sometimes you don't need FAA approval because you're not going that high or you're not in an airplane path kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. So what I want to do on this part is I want to talk a little bit. Wayne, what have you learned?
Very smart and astute observation.
Be a little more substantive.
Really smart.
All right. So what I want to do in this part is, how many people here want to be a developer? Okay. And where do you think that you start to be a developer? Pedro, where do you think you start?
Right answer
is not my office.
Where do you think you start?
From the bottom.
Where do you think you start, Sebastian?
Burning on someone else's dime.
Adela, where do you think?
I started for a company, they have reputation and learn a lot.
Where did you start? What did you do?
I started cleaning pools at the buildings when I was 13.
Wow. And what else? What else have you done in the company before you were?
I still clean pools in the buildings. I'm 59. No, I went from cleaning pools to working after junior high and high school. That's how I made my gas money. I would go to the office after school. Then I went into, construction for a couple of years. I had to prove myself. You know, I mean, I got to a building, it was 10 stories, and I said, what do I do? And they said, take this wheelbarrow and this shovel and this broom and go floor by floor to the top and clean it. And I said, okay, I finished. What do I do now? They said, okay, now work your way back down again. They want to know if you're going to do the job. And then, so after a couple of years of proving, then I finally got into the office secretarial pool, literally. And then slowly, I remember the first time I walked into my dad's office, and he looked at me, he says, what are you doing in my office? You go to my secretary, and you can make an appointment. You can't just walk in my office. You know, I mean, it's hard. So you start at the bottom, you find yourself in awkward positions and situations, and you kind of have to keep your wits about you, and it's tougher, I think, with family, because if you're reprimanded, for lack of a better term, is that your boss? Is that your dad? Is that your partner? Is that your, you know, who's mad at me?
Yeah, yeah.
So all those different levels of you starting at the bottom, you got to actually get an entire feel of the business, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I did leasing, I did management, I did,
And expenses?
accounting.
Okay.
Moved around, you know, a year or so in each one.
So if I'm
Until
going to
I
be
found, after a couple of years, you know, my niche was the financing portion and administration of the company.
okay, you're finding your niche.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you can't find your niche if you haven't been exposed to different areas, right?
Something that only happenstance put me in a position where we were financing a property, and I happened to be strolling by, and I said, oh, I can help do that. And it just went from there. I mean, I enjoyed it a lot. It was creative, and from then on, I don't think my dad's talked to a bank in 20 years. In terms of the deal, I mean, yes, he signs the guarantees. But
Were you able to deal with the finances at that time, or you learned as you
no, I had to learn how to negotiate. You know, because back then they were all his buddies. Now they're all younger than I am. You know, but back then they were all his friends from all the years that he was doing it. So now I've been doing it 20 years, and you know, these are my connections. And you know, when my son, who's 31, started, I remember I'd bring him into all these meetings, and he'd say, you know, Dad, you're really insecure. I said, what do you mean? He said, you know, you want to be best friends with everybody. You know, because I start my meetings with, you know, nice to meet you, where you're from, do you have kids, they're in college, He goes, you know, you want to be best friends with everybody. I said, no, this is relationship. This is how you form relationships. And then he got it. So, but you do what you got to do. Even if it's not, there's no, everybody has a job description, but go beyond it. You know, the first person that walks in my office and says, it's not my job, that's the last thing they're going to say to me. So very nicely going to excuse them. So, you know, you're part of the organization, you're part of the organization.
How did Austin get his start?
Austin, in fact, we were talking about that at dinner. He always wanted to be a developer, always wanted to come into the company. That was, you know, he was sure of that. He went into a very good school, and he graduated. He said, great, I'm ready to work. And I said, good, go get a job. So I sent him back to his resource center at his college, and he found a job for 2 years And then when the 2 years were up, he, on that day, that hour, that minute, that second, he quit where he was and he came to work for me.
He found a job that has a very good training program. It's a real estate job, and it's a company that has a very good training program. So, you know, throughout your time with me, which has been in the classroom, on the boat, the developer luncheon, I think what you've seen is that real estate is not just about, you know, the sticks and the bricks. It's also about the relationships, but it's very important to get that door open, to get your foot in the door. Because you're not going to walk in knowing everything, because that's why we're here trying to learn more. But what we're trying to do in this program is introduce you to people and companies and ways that you can gain the experience so that you can continue to build your career, right? So a lot of people had questions, and only the people around us could hear, like, should their first property be a development? Should it be a condo building? What should it be if they want to have property?
Real tough question. Well, first of all, if I could do it over again, I'd have a law degree. I think it's the most... A law degree. I think it's one of my major regrets. I think it's a phenomenal background to have. Forget practicing law, but you know, I make sure my brother reads a lot of the stuff I put out and produce before it goes out, because it all has legal ramifications, and I'm not an attorney. So I would stress that. I think that would be a fantastic background. The other thing would be to actually become a general contractor and don't get hoodwinked. You know, Florida UF has a great GC program. Maybe that one. So, I'm sorry, my daughter's texting me. No, she's okay. She's in labor, but it's okay, don't worry. No, I'm just kidding. Wait. I think since the financing, you are going to need financing to do your first deal, then, you know, to me, what is real estate in its the smallest basic element? And that would be a condominium, I think, or a house or something of that nature. And like we were talking, it could be even one that's already rented. You're buying an income-producing property. So I would think something of that nature. I don't think I'd make my first project the construction of. I'd make it the acquisition of. I'd get the experience and do that a few times and flip a few houses or pay your mortgages every month and build up a track record. And you'll find banks are looking for people to grow with. You know, they just need to know that they can rely on you.
Any more questions?
Otherwise I'm going to labor. I'm going to the hospital.
What about your green initiatives with Panorama? So what's
Oh, screw the green. I'm going to pollute the whole city. No, we'll have LEED certified.
They have to be certified.
Yeah.
Because they're over a certain, they're like a large-scale project. And in the city of Miami, those projects over a certain square footage must be LEED certified. And they exceed it by a lot.
Right, and the tenants, you know, especially in the office buildings, like it because it reduces their pass-through expenses. More so than in the residential.
Demetra. Hello. Say something.
It's okay, you can still ask a question. Okay.
You said you don't sell your property, you prefer to rent, right?
No, I said, well, depends which way we're talking about. The building we're building is a rental building, not a for sale building. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, because earlier you said you don't usually market.
I don't, well, when I have a building, everything's for sale. I'm not stupid enough to say nothing's for sale. But I don't go to real estate brokers. I don't put signs up. I don't market it to anybody. People know who we are. We've been here 65 years. They know all my properties. They know who I am. And if they have somebody they feel is qualified and interested in one of the properties, they call me.
Okay, because my next question.
No, you can't have a listing on my property.
My next question would be, if you are a landlord, how often do you face situations like the eviction process?
We talked about residential.
Well, you know, it depends on the number. Residential depends on the number of units. It constantly, you know, there's always somebody who's in default of their lease. And they're not all monetary defaults. I mean, I can evict somebody for something other than not paying their rent, like not having adequate insurance or valid insurance certificates, things of that nature.
That he's talking about the commercial contract. And
Right.
we talked about how.
No, I'm making people have rental insurance to move in here. Yeah, I'm going to force it. You're not moving in unless you have renter's insurance.
And if anybody wants to ask commercial leasing questions, we used to do the commercial leasing class too, so you can ask those guys too. So, yeah.
How did you come up with the panorama?
I did. My dad did. I presume, you know, view, panorama.
That's my last name. Orama.
What's
that?
Oh, Orama. Panorama. I got it. Took me a second.
The hotel, the Hyatt Hotel,
Yes.
is going to be 10 years lease?
30-year lease.
30?
Which Hyatt did you?
It's a new brand called Encore, I think it is. Forgive me, I'm not 100% sure. I forgot. Or,
A little bit about. We talked a lot about what you guys have been doing now, but what kind of projects were the first projects that your dad was on?
well, my dad is a Holocaust survivor. Lost many members of his family. Was rescued by the U.S. troops in the late 40s and found his way to France where he had family and received degrees in architecture and engineering from Polytechnique, and came over here in the early 50s, not speaking English, not having money, not knowing anybody. And he's one of those, you know, those stories you read about, those self-made people who, you know, landed here without a place to stay, and I think got his first job folding drapes in boxes or something like that. And eventually started doing cofferdams and bridges in New York by the in the harbor in New York when the battleships used to dock up against the bulkheads. They would gouge out holes, so he would fix those underwater. We did all the garbage work that no one else wanted to do. And then he became, in '56, he worked his way up to be the 10th largest home builder in the country. And decided that he was tired of traveling all over because he was a contractor then, not a developer. He was building for other people, not for himself. So although he had a very good financial year, he was tired of traveling. He was building in Kenya and Ethiopia and all Greenland and Iceland and all over the world. So he moved to Florida, became a developer, and started building only for himself, doing multifamily, low-rise multifamily, 2, 3, 4 stories, mostly up in Cape Canaveral, Cape Kennedy area, you know, Merritt Island. And then mid-60s came down to Miami. He said it was either going to be Miami or San Francisco, and he picked Miami.
And they've been in the real estate market here in Miami since the 60s.
Yes. And I've always worked at, you know, I've worked at most of the buildings as I was growing up. I learned something very important when you're showing a unit, an apartment unit, always knock on the door before you unlock it. Very, very, very important.
work on other panoramas? That you think is
Well, in terms of my involvement, you know, in the financing and acquisition and, you know, and those facets, clearly Panorama, it's the largest construction loan ever made in South Florida. It's the largest project south of New York. It's a lot of the, you know, biggest and best. So it's garnered the most interest. It's been the most challenging because even the banks that I was dealing with, many of them hadn't done loans this large. So that's so far that's the one.
What's the total square footage?
2,700,000 and some odd thousand square feet. Some odd thousand is not a real estate term, but first I can give you. The whole complex, including this building, is about 3 million square feet.
Yeah, James Lee.
You said you take on only one project at a time, even though you're renting these projects, you're renting these building renting, you're still managing. At what point do you move on to the next project?
What I meant was we won't start construction of a project while we're still in construction of the first one, unless it's at a point. It doesn't have to be fully stabilized, but it has to be carrying itself. And then, so even though we may still be working it in terms of occupancy and things like that, we'll be okay moving on to the next project. As long as I can take my team off the job and put them on the next project to keep it going properly, then I'm good.
They generally in the project at the same time, or take your teammate and
No, they're all there. My architects are there, my engineers are there, my owners' reps are there. Their offices are right here in this building. So they're there in and out of the building all day long.
I'm good.
Something like that? Okay, we do 2 projects a year, okay. That is the shot.
I'm good. There is a small step here. I went back to see you and then
As long as you're okay. As long as you're okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
I wanted to get up there.
The property that's right next to the J, correct?
Correct, the vacant lot, the land.
Do you guys have any idea what you guys are gonna build up on that?
Sure.
Or no? Is that the fact? What?
Sure.
Have an idea.
You're asking what it was, you just asked me if I knew.
If you guys already had plans or like.
Yeah. Well, we're going, we had it approved for one project. We brought some partners in, some new partners in who have some different ideas, so we're going through some changes in the plans now, and then we'll seek some more variances, and probably, you know, we could be, it's a condo project.
Okay.
So, it'll probably be a lengthy project.
Do you think it'll affect your views for the panorama?
No.
Did you guys hire like a sarcasm?
We're renting to blind people on the south side.
Do you guys have a question, legal question? Do you think that views are protected legally in the state of Florida?
No.
It's not. And yes, my undergrads know that case, right?
Oh, yeah.
What was it?
The Fountain Blue and the Eden Rock.
You know what they did there? I owned the Eden Rock for 10 years.
Oh, nice.
You know how there's 2 pools there?
That was your idea.
Yeah. It's the spite pool.
You figured they were the blind people.
Because Bill Novak got upset at Mufson for putting his pool there, so he built this blank wall to block the sun from the pool to the Eden Rock.
The concept of a wall to block the sun from the Eden Rock.
So Eden Rock had to build the second pool.
There's many places to come down on vacation, so people would choose between the Eden Rock and the and then they built the wall so you can get good sunset.
We're building a wall, and Mexico is paying for it.
So what happened in the case?
Did you see there was like a settlement?
What? No, what happened in the case? What did the law say? Is there a protection? Because right? Because the Eden Rock Sewer, and they said that there's a protection for view and ancient light, is what they called it. What did the court say in the state of Florida? You guys know, you don't
Well,
know.
yeah, I would say that the case they didn't like. They lost the case.
The court said that there could be protection if the local zoning allowed for it. Kind of just like that, the Supreme Court case that we had in the Kello, where they said the property could be taken for economic use unless the state law says it can't.
I will tell you that when we do our projects, we have to do shadow studies before the city will grant our permission, and we have to obviously create, scale models of the surrounding properties at different times of the day. And the city does look and consider, how you're blocking shade and pools and things like that.
This is the city of Miami, in this year, and that was the
That was
city of Miami,
1950,
right, and
Miami
that year.
Beach.
So, yeah.
Is there any assigned parking for the rental units?
You cannot have an assigned spot, no. Yes, there will be some assigned spots, and there'll be valet. And in fact, I'll give you credit if you don't have a car. No, seriously. If you come and move in the building and you do not have a car, I will give you a monthly rent credit.
Right, and based on the zoning lecture that we have at Rogelio, why do you think that is?
They want Miami to be a
And then we can use the parking for something else, right?
Yeah, I think my typical tenant is not going to be driving to work.
It might work in the building, right?
That's the idea.
Yeah, and Arturo, you had a question?
Yeah, I live in the northeast corner of the J. And my lease.
Oh, you're screwed.
My lease is up in April. Can you give me kind of a heads up? Yes or no?
You should just move into his building.
I don't think I'll be ready till October.
So you should go month to month, so you only have to get 15 days.
We opened in the lobby of the building, this building.
Yeah.
Our little rental office. You can go in and look at the amenities and stuff, but honestly, I don't think it'll be till October till we're ready. Sorry. I'll push it month to month and offer tower.
I want to move to the beach.
So what stage are you in now? Are you developing the inside?
What floor are you on?
We're on 68.
You haven't topped off.
No, we're not even close to topping off. We'll probably top off in March, April, something like that.
We walked, we took a picture today before class to see, and they're putting up the glass.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, I'll have tenants living on the lower floors while I'm still doing construction work in the upper floors.
No.
Oh, absolutely.
The building will be built. It will be built.
The exterior will look like a completed building, but I may be putting up drywall and bathrooms and doors and flooring and things like that on the 80th floor, and you're living on the 40th floor.
Do you have to pay taxes for the whole building?
Not until the first calendar year it's 100% complete. Good question.
So when do you think it will be 100%?
Never.
I checked, but it's very fake, 416,000.
That's about right.
Why do you think they paid it in November?
It's a discount.
Does the lender collect escrow? My lenders don't, but yes, a lot of lenders do escrow for taxes and insurance.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Question. How did you come to a decision on how many units you were going to build in that building?
Seriously, as many as we were able to get permission to build.
I wasn't done with my question.
I'm sorry. I wasn't done with my answer either, but it's okay.
In comparison to how much square footage of commercial space?
The mix.
The mix.
You mean, how did we take the 2.7 million gross and decide this square footage is going to be dedicated to, because of the way the building is constructed. You know, for example, the office space is on the parking levels, which lend itself perfectly to that use in a certain area. And then the area below the hotel was perfectly located street front on Brickell Bay Drive for the retail. And obviously the residential tower obviously rises from the top. So you kind of go backwards on it.
Yeah, I know.
And then, excuse me, I was just going to say that, you know, the number of units obviously affects the number of parking spaces and things like that. So, you know, you're juxtaposing numbers back and forth until you find that right mix of parking and unit, residential unit.
I don't know if this is going to be the last question or not, but more like a life thing. From all the things that you've, like, all those positions that you've worked and all the buildings that you've built, what's like the one biggest life lesson that you've learned that has impacted you the most?
I probably haven't learned it yet. No, I don't mean that facetiously. I mean, I think I still have so much more to go. Be honest, have integrity, maintain your relationships. If you say it, do it. Say what you mean. Especially when dealing with, you know, when dealing with anybody. You know, I mean, I think those rules surpass just work. I think they're just life.
This property, we took a class on property taxes. When does property tax go up once it's completed?
Well, once they file for the TCO, remember? And I think we talked about it in this class.
2018, I'll have to.
Until they're finally complete. And sometimes if your taxes are going to be so different,
If it was finally complete on, let's say, November 30th or January 10th, the date that the taxes are determined is January 1st. So they would wait until the January 1st passes, so they don't get hit with that property tax until they're, you know, as occupied as can be, leasing and not hit with the same amount of tax.
Tax based on just the land?
No, because I don't think it's just the land, no. Is it land?
It's a land valuation.
I guess because they separated the parcels, because this parcel's separate, right.
Separate.
How would the property appraiser know how to tax?
Well, because the appraiser looks at three different, it's sort of like an appraisal. They do a cost approach, a sales approach, and a replacement cost. And then the tax assessor says, I'll take the one that gives me the most money. And then we appeal it, and then we negotiate a settlement, and that's how it goes. I've estimated our taxes there will be somewhere probably about $7 million.
and that's
After
before.
being appealed?
No, that's before the TCO.
No, that's when it's fully operational.
No, because they just paid right now for just for the land.
Yeah.
As soon as built, it's okay because when I mean 400,000 or 16.
Yeah.
But no one's gonna be owner, they're gonna rent it, so they're gonna charge each tenant.
It's always good to have
Well, see,
property taxes as low as it can be if you're the owner.
Right. See, in the commercial building, I can pass it all through. In the commercial pieces, I can say your proportionate share of the taxes is X, and it went up, and you pay Y. But in the residential, once you give them their rent, that's their rent. But the nice thing about residential is I can go up and rent every year, and taxes usually affect everybody.
In residential, one of the differences between residential renting and commercial is
Residential leases are normally just for 1 year. So if you're an owner of residential, you can bump, if the market allows the rent every year, you can bump it up. We don't have rent control here in Miami. And in commercial, normally the leases that we discuss, you know, they're long in terms of pages and they're long in terms of years. So they could be 10, 20, 30 years. And if you entered into a lease, you might be stuck with a rate that's lower when a market increases, right? Or vice versa, right? But then if it's vice versa, your tenants might have to negotiate with you to stay, right?
I mean, I have actually lowered somebody's rent in the middle of a long-term lease. Because I felt it was the right thing to do. To a guy who just signed a lease, and then 3 months later, the rents just plummeted. And I didn't want to stick him. I didn't think it was the right thing to do.
And we talked about, we showed an image that when you enter into the lease relationship, it's like holding hands, the landlord and the tenant. So the idea is that both sides do want it to work out if there's performance, especially if it's long term. So he found a way to have it work out.
Yeah, because, you know, wherever I go, I see tenants. I mean, you can't get away, you can't get away from anybody in this city.
What kind of retail tenants are you looking for?
Well, the primary tenant will be a gourmet, prepared foods kind of marketplace, like a Paracones like a Paracones market, but maybe 4 times the size. And then your normal, you know, dry cleaner and hair salon, and that's one. But a big one is a doggy daycare center. For example, Opera Tower, I mentioned before, has about 300 dogs. So this building could easily have that many. Plus, you have thousands of units surrounding. And yeah, we've already put out a letter of intent on that.
Are you asking to collect any percentage of your revenue?
I prefer no percentage rents. I don't want to start looking at anybody's records.
And some people do that. And some
Restaurants,
right.
a lot of restaurants do percentage rent, but you know.
The design districts, I led a group towards the design district, and to get those tenants to take some of those spaces,
At
they
those
had to
numbers.
be percentage rent. Yeah.
But I would, you know, you almost need a point of sale terminal. I mean, you have to be very trusting or very electronically
You have to really
oriented.
monitor the tenant. Sometimes, well, I guess not everybody knows what we're talking about. Sometimes in commercial leasing, the landlord will say that there's a rent, you know, and we talked about all the ways that rent could be defined, like Forrest Gump describes shrimp, you know, fried, roasted, boiled, whatever. So there's all kinds of rent, and it depends how it's defined in your contract. But there can also be percentage rent. And percentage rent is when there is a lease, and then the landlord says, kind of like, I'm taking a risk with you. So if you make a percentage over a threshold of sales, then you have to pay a percentage to us. But it puts a burden on the landlord to monitor the tenant or to really trust the tenant. So not everybody wants that. It's used in certain scenarios. Yeah. And then there's percentage rent, right?
Percentage plus, percentage against. So we're getting too complicated.
Yeah, so, I mean, we could talk about the types of rent for like many classes. Yeah.
Do you have any restrictions for tenants that are using, for example, Airbnb, those type of websites?
Yes.
And what are the restrictions?
Well, we haven't written our rules and regs yet, but I'm aware that there have been certain, in some of our other properties, we've had some problems. So we'll make sure we address it in a way that, you know, doesn't have an adverse effect on the rest of the building. In theory, I don't have a problem with it, but there could be problem tenants coming in.
At what point does infrastructure catch up with your development to be able to support all the building that's going?
You mean infrastructure, my office infrastructure, you mean?
You know, roads and just, you know.
Well, you have to do, to get your permits, you have to do traffic studies and economic studies and aircraft studies and shadow studies and present everything to the city. You have to show the city that the roads and the infrastructure have the capacity to accommodate your development. And when it runs out of capacity, it's out of capacity.
How do you determine it?
The city can, for example, water and sewer. You know, I mean, the plant can handle so many gallons, you know, per day or per minute or however they gauge it, I forget. And when it's out of capacity, it's out of capacity. The next guy's got to build a new plant. That's just.
They have engineers and they work with a whole team that do the studies, and they have to submit them to the city, the traffic counts, what the estimated traffic counts will be.
Exactly.
Professor?
Yeah.
Have you looked at how your building's going to affect the value in the area?
If I looked at it, yeah, I think it's going to increase the value of the area.
Estimates?
What do you want to buy? I don't know.
You know, it's a property adjacent to it and across the street from it.
He's not gonna sell it.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to sell it. Well, no, someone makes an offer, but no, we do believe that a property of this stature, we believe this is a legacy building. We believe this is the building of Miami. So yes, I believe it's going to increase the values of those properties around Brickell and Brickell Bay Drive. Yeah.
Yes, that's.
Do you think maybe like having like streetcars like we had back in the 50s and 60s and like they have in cities like New Orleans now and Charleston, South Carolina would be good for Miami? Like
the trolley?
Yeah, like a trolley. Yeah.
Well, there's a trolley.
In other parts of Miami.
Oh.
As we continue to grow.
No. I think it'll happen as they get developed. Like you see the Wynwood area getting developed and Edgewood and Belmead and Morningside. And, I think as you start going north, I do think eventually they'll come together, or they'll be brought together probably by a trolley system. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one project that is coming to Miami, On Board Miami. It's going to connect Orlando.
They're calling it the Bright Line now.
It's coming and it's going to be interconnected with.
Yeah, we're actually talking to them about tying their main station into our tall office tower downtown.
Are you helping any of your medical tenants or retail tenants with credit to build out their,
We will give it an allowance, a tenant improvement allowance on a per square foot basis, depending upon the rent. And then to make the space and the deal more attractive and
Commercial leasing, sometimes when a landlord's looking at a long-term tenant, they'll give a tenant improvement allowance, and they'll either give the tenant like a credit towards a build-out, or the landlord will say that they will do a build-out and do it for the tenant because they want to maintain, or both, the quality of the build-out. So it's an incentive in commercial leasing that sometimes you find, and it's normally to attract tenants. That's the reason for it. Right.
It improves my property. Because I'm putting my money back into my space.
So how would a normal scenario?
It depends. It's purely, honestly, it's negotiable. It's a negotiable item. A lot of it has to do with direct. The more rent you pay me, the more money you pay me in rent, the more money I can afford to give you in TI, tenant improvement allowances. And the longer your term, the more I can amortize it and keep the rate down.
What do you invest in outside of those?
Nothing. My kids. I hope it's a good investment.
Yes, Savannah.
You normally incorporate non-compete clauses into your commercial leasing?
I really haven't had that. Yeah, there's a couple of exclusives within the building. More of that than non-compete, because I'm not really home to Cartier or anybody who I don't want to open a store. I'm worried about opening a store 3 miles away. But, I might have two banks interested in one area, so there are some exclusive. Like I have Pollo Tropical as one of my tenants in one of my buildings, so, I can't have anybody that sells more than 25% chicken. That kind of stuff.
What about FIU?
We will not put another university in the building, I promise you. You got it, it's you.
We're the best anyways.
That's right. You get it.
Any other questions? Are you hiring?
Usually by the time I get into look, I didn't bring any business cards, but I will put my email on the whiteboard. I was going to say the blackboard, but that tells you how old I am. I don't know.
No, I think the question is he hiring, but also what types of places, and we looked at this before, what types of other places does he recommend to look at in the job, right?
I have to think about it, because that's what I was going to say. By the time, usually when we finish these talks, by the time I get to my car, I've got about 20 emails. I have to think about how to not cavalierly answer your question, but give you something that is meaningful, and I will.
Do you ever take
internships, I mean, Karen is always.
I did it once for a banker's son. What did your dad do? That was a joke.
That was a joke. Wayne was trying to be funny. I don't think I know, but that second part wasn't good. Yeah. That was a joke. No, but I think, sometimes when Wayne comes here, people just get crazy. You guys just get crazy, and everybody thinks that, but we heard that the team is only 20 or 30 people, right? So I think what would be really helpful is that if Wayne also thinks of other places, and with me, I know tons of developers all over. I think you've seen that through the people I've brought to the room and the people I've brought to our events. Where's a place that you can get your foot in the door, that you can learn, and that you can start building, your career here in South Florida. So, definitely send him an email, but we have, I think, 50 students in the room, 63 students, and they're not always in a position to do that, right? Yeah, over there.
Before I was here, I stumbled into a holiday party for a CDC. Are CDC something like, I guess on the developer side, so when you get experience? Yeah.
Maybe development?
They were a collection of different CDC organizations in the city, banks and different organizations. Is that a good angle to go for if I want to become a developer?
I know that the banks are obligated to commit certain amount of funds.
Yes.
Community redevelopment act, but I don't know.
Pedro.
On a scale, just because I'm interested, who's more bigger? Apollo or Trinity?
What's the different philosophy?
It's a different model.
You just scale, you just can build this and we do one building.
Right. Neosha.
This is actually from one of the online people. He wants to know, do certain property types have easier access to funding?
Do certain property types have easier access to funding?
Yes, but that's not the developer's choice. That's the banks follow, have their own economists, and they establish their own trends and projections. And they will deem, they're not making land loans. The bank won't make a land loan unless it's to some special borrower.
Why do you guys think a bank wouldn't make a land loan? What?
It's not a real sex piece of property.
No, it doesn't matter if it's sexy. Why wouldn't they make a land loan?
It's not producing income.
Has no cash flow coming. Right.
Right. So
That was a two-part question.
So the bank will say, we feel we have too much, or it may be individualized by banks. One bank may have a lot of exposure in multifamily, for example, and say, we don't want to put out any more multifamily money, but we'll do commercial office buildings, or vice versa.
And then the second part is...
Who is this? So we can say their name.
Ahmed Jones.
Ahmed Jones.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Ahmed.
And does he think crowdfunding is feasible for developers seeking foreign?
What funding? I'm sorry.
Crowdfunding?
I don't know.
Like where crowdfunding is like where they raise money on the web and everybody gives a little bit and then...
Sounds like a nightmare.
So you don't think it's...
No, I don't, it doesn't sound like something that I would find an attractive way of raising funds.
Okay, well, his last question is...
Ahmed has a lot of questions. That's all right.
Will the Palms in Vegas offer interest-free financing? I think you have a property.
I will never offer interest-free financing. But the Palms is a rental.
Oh. I'm sure you can.
The Palms is a rental complex in Las Vegas. It's only 200 units. It's very small. And it'll be slated for demolition soon.
Yes, Donnie.
I know you mentioned that you didn't have on the top of your head the answer. Can you do the best job you have on the top of your head of what you recommend, what type of jobs to look for, to get into, just to start your step towards this?
The first thought that comes to me is what Austin did, what my son did, which was the CMBS, as boring as it may be. but CMBS, rotation at LNR it gave him such a broad overview of management and performing properties and lease administration and mortgage administration. I don't know how many LNRs, not Lennar, LNR.
Because they have a really good rotation
The
program.
2-year real estate analyst program, that's phenomenal. I mean, when he got out of it, he knew he was very advanced in terms of his knowledge of the workings of mortgages, leases, things like that. He hated it, but you know, he did it.
It's like a real estate boot camp.
Right.
Even more than this class. Right?
You're paying them or they're paying you?
No, they paid him, they trained him, and then I took him.
You work a lot. You work like 78.
And is that involved in the actual investments? That's behind
Yeah, this is a company that buys the lowest grade, the lowest tranche of a CMBS release. So they would take the highest risk, so they get the highest return. But they also have the highest foreclosure and non-performing loan portfolio. So they get these young kids in there to go out and they teach them how to make sure the leases or the mortgages are being administered properly, who's in default, you know, rights secure. If they take over the property, they manage the properties, they have to travel and visit the properties. So they get a sort of a very well-rounded, you know, feel for the real estate world. So it was invaluable, it really was.
You would say that side is more important than dealing with the actual investment side?
Sure, you can't get to the investment side till you know the basics.
Is that similar to what Bayview Asset Management does?
I don't know.
I think Bayview is also a very good place to start.
They do the Coral Gables. They do some CMBS as well. They have many divisions. They probably have about 400 or 500 employees, and they have a very good training program. You could be in all different divisions of Bayview and get well trained there. So I think Bayview is another good place. I mean, I think the property appraiser's office that I sent out the internship, that's a paid internship that's part-time, which would respect the fact that you're in class, is another good one. I think anywhere that you can have someone who will train you, or there's a training program, is good. I see with Donnie, he's ready to jump in to develop his first building like tomorrow or yesterday. But I think that you need some knowledge behind you, you need some experience behind you before you do it. So that's, you know, what we're encouraging you to look for, those kind of jobs. You're taking the class, which is great, it's taking the first step, but also to look for those kind of jobs. Yeah, Annalie.
After your building is fully occupied, I don't know if you're gonna answer it or not, but what kind of minimum return are you expecting?
Percentage on your investment.
Okay, a lot. A lot. The answer's gonna be a lot. Yeah.
Remember something, every time I sign the lease, it's going through for a year. I gotta do it again, and again, and again.
And you're gonna have costs after covering your
Every
costs.
year. I'll do my part.
Okay.
A lot.
Brokers.
A lot.
I thought you wouldn't answer it.
All I know is that right now we're at a lot of risk.
A lot of risk, a personal recourse, right? A lot of risk, personal recourse, and tremendous responsibility.
Although I feel
Right.
I feel very comfortable leasing the building up. The attention we're drawing, even from just our little, you know, Brickalista billboards are, I mean, we've got a couple of hundred inquiries already in less than 3 weeks. Yes. But I work with an outside broker.
What do you think of the yacht club redevelopment project?
What yacht club redevelopment? No, I know exactly what he's talking about, but I don't think, not sure it's gonna happen.
I know.
Maybe it will, maybe it won't.
That must be many years.
Oh, yeah. They want to take where the pool deck is and knock down the pool deck parking lot and put up another, like, 60-story tower. So you have the Mark, the iClub, and then the Aeon building. It's owned by Aimco, and they're typically not developers, but if they screw it up like they did the Flamingo Miami Beach, it would be terrible. I would buy that site.
Don, you had another question?
Are you suggesting that building just as ideal, or are you like, you think it's worthwhile to be like do property management to learn it from the property side, or there's a waste of time in terms of?
No, I think property management is really a very wide, I don't want to say all-encompassing, but widely encompassing, because it's not only dealing with the tenants, it's dealing with the physical structure and all the appurtenances, air conditioning, and the list just goes on. And just remember, when you're the property manager, the phone is never ringing with the tenant on the other end calling to thank you. Okay? Every phone call is a complaint.
I've had students who've made over 6-figure salaries with property management companies. All those buildings, whether they're rental or whether they're condo, need a property manager. I had a student last year, your same time, who was the property manager, I think, for 900 Brickell, 600 Brickell, and he managed the whole building. And I've had others who've managed the towers on South Point. I think the question, though, is it a waste of time? That's the problem is with that question. Because no experience that you're going to get in working on a deal or working with a property is a waste of time. It's all adding experience to what you haven't experienced yet, right?
I did property management for years. I mean, it's thankless. You're on call 24/7, but it's your building. It's your building. So at 3 in the morning, when the air conditioning pump starts leaking, that's where you are. So you will learn your building. You'll learn your tenants. It's a very all-encompassing job. It's good. It's a good place. And then leasing.
I think we're going to take our last question. Anybody have a last question? Yeah, Taiwan.
What are some recommended readings?
Recommended reading?
I really honestly knowledge of sexual.
Wait, use your mic. Because the people online can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I haven't been paying attention to really much reading or vocational or reading or anything like that. So I really don't have one. Sorry.
Read whatever documents are in the field that you're in, and read whatever assignment you professor has said.
That's important. Thank you all very, very, very much.
We're not done yet. I want to end with, where's my, let's see, I don't see my, Wayne had shared this with me, and this is what's on his dad's desk, so I want to share it with you, the American Dream, which says, what does it say? Who wants to read it for me?
Work hard until you get there. When you get there, work harder.
Yeah.
Oh, my dad's dead.
Yeah. So I want to thank Wayne for joining us. I have gifts, and also I want to take our class photograph. So we're going to do that. So who wants to take our photo? I think my phone may be towards. No, it's still working.
No.
Yeah, they'll switch out.
It's the truth, man.
Alright.
Can't make a million and go to sleep.
Come on, everybody, get close. Get close. Wait, you see in the middle. Come on. Everybody, come on in. Come on in. You can do a serious and a crazy. Yeah. Come on, come on. We can stay. Okay. I think the ocean. We don't have the ocean. Yeah.
The ocean. Okay, David. Okay, the ocean. One, two, and three. And now with the teacher camera.
Thank you.
Oh my God. Okay, so I sent it to you. Now let me take a picture with me.
Yeah? Okay.
Selfie.
Oh, we didn't take a
I
picture.
sent it to you. Yeah.
One, two.
And then a fun one. We need a fun one. Yeah.
One, two, three. Got it.
Alright.
I sent it to the group and also
Thank
to
you.
So what is
We're just taking a 5-minute break, and if somebody can pass these out there a break, you guys can fill them out.
There's a lot of class.
Thank you.
There's a lot of class.
Yeah.
Now, what are you gonna do?
Wednesday. On Tuesday nights, we must have been reading. Pass around. We're going to watch
You don't mind if I
Congratulations on your excellent questions today. I was very proud of you. Good work, Terrell. He did. You were kind of getting it yourself, Sebastian. He's like, oh no, I'm not finished. Like, wait a minute, bro.
No, it's using questions on my
Oh, so you know how to handle this.
About Daddy's question, what's the difference between this and this? They have absolutely nothing to do with it.
That's the exam?
What did you write out to go over with the
I'm in that process.
What's it like, Robert Lee, probably Stockholm?
I like the
Okie dokie. So we're gonna get started back up. Some people who were not in class or not paying attention didn't know that today is our last class. today is our last class, right? Yes.
Why are we only having 7?
Oh, yeah.
We had developer luncheon, we had boat tour, so,
Other class with you.
well, this is our last class. You can always come back to the next semester. This is our last class. So, we're going to go over some assignments, and I'm also going to ask, let's see. Oh, it didn't. I didn't save that photograph. There was a great photograph I wanted for you guys, but I don't have it. Didn't save it. There was one as a picture of like Mr. Wonderful. You know, he's like the Corona beer guy or something. What beer guy is he?
Dos Equis.
Dos Equis. And he says, I don't always care about my grade, except when it's at the end of the semester. And I haven't done the work, and I want to know if there's extra credit. And I'll have to send it to you like in an email. I meant to upload it, but I didn't. But I know that some people feel like Mr. Dos Equis, Mr. Wonderful. But really, you know, the class is about improving. And so if you can improve, that's what we're looking for. If you didn't do well on your midterm, but if you take the comments to heart and you improve, and you took the comments in a professional manner, then there's lots of potential for you. You know, this class is really not to hurt people. It's not. The reason the class is essays and like thinking is because I want you guys to think. I want you to apply the lessons. And I think if it's just multiple choice, you can ace the test, but you don't have the critical thinking skills that apply to lessons. Wayne reinforced the importance of reading and reading the documents. And that's what I was really trying to teach in this class is reading, so that's what it's about. I'm going to go over the answers to the last assignment. And then our exam is going to be either 5 or 6 questions. And one of the questions has 4 or 5 parts to it. And you should know what that question is already, because I already said when we were talking about that question that you would see that question over and over again. No, actually we're not having John Locke on this part of the exam, because this part of the exam is only on the things that we haven't been tested on yet. So we're having commercial leasing, residential leasing, and foreclosures on this exam.
The timeline of the foreclosures?
No, it wasn't the timeline. But you'll probably figure it out when we go over the best answers. So, you know, I heard that some people are very stressed about class, but I hope that people remember that in this class, you have already seen the answers and the questions to your midterms and your finals. Most classes that you ever take in your life, you don't already know what the questions will be and what the answers will be. So this class gives you that opportunity. And you can mark it up, right? You can use your notes. Are you supposed to go do research? No. And there's no credit awarded for doing research beyond the readings or the class lectures. Because I couldn't grade people if there was, right? How could I grade anybody? I wouldn't know what to compare it against. And I want to see how you use the information that we've covered together.
What are these study questions due? The ones you gave us today?
These study questions aren't due because this is our last class. I just gave them to you if you wanted to have a way to guide our conversation, because we were jumping all over the place, right? So if you wanted to have a way to guide the way that we talked or to remember things, it was just to keep it a way that you could categorize the information. That's all. Yeah.
What did you mean by bad boy carve-outs?
Bad boy carve-outs are when you have a non-recourse loan, and you can look it up in your book. It's actually in your Flora book. No, your Ling and Archer book. It's when you have a non-recourse loan, so it's not you're not liable as a borrower. But there's certain things that if you're a bad boy or a bad girl for PC reasons, that could make it become recourse. Like if you did intentional damage or if there was environmental problem. And they're called bad boy carve-outs because they would take away the non-recourse and turn it into recourse. Yeah. But we didn't get into that tonight. So does anybody have questions so far? Okay. Yeah.
I wanted to say thank you and behind all my friends and classmates. We took this class, oh my God, it changed our minds, our life and everything. It's unbelievable what you're doing for us. Thank you so much. And I know that many of us have the same feelings as you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we hope to have more professors like this because you introduce in the real life.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
You made it. All right. What? Oh, I did? Nice.
Boom. Yeah. Larry the lender lent $500,000 to Betty the borrower in Florida. Betty the borrower has the money, the title, and all the bundle of sticks, property rights. Betty is not paying Larry the lender back. What process must Larry follow to get his money back and get the property back? How long may this process take? Since Larry the lender is in Florida, and Florida is a lien theory state, Larry will have to go through the judicial foreclosure process. Lien theory states require the lender to go through the judicial foreclosure process during a foreclosure. This process could be lengthy and costly for most lenders trying to repossess a property. Although Betty the borrower is not paying, she still has all the bundle of sticks, which I know is a reference to the class lecture. So she still technically has all the rights to live there until the judicial foreclosure is done. The first step in the foreclosure process for the lender is initiating and filing a complaint with the clerk of courts and then serving that complaint to the borrower. This process can take very long, especially if the borrower does not cooperate. The length in time can be 6 months or even a year or two, depending on how fast the court process all the paperwork and the trial. Typical delays can happen, which make the process longer if the borrower contests the actions or seeks or delays adjournments of hearing or files for bankruptcy. I think it's a very complete answer. What do you guys think? It explains to me that there's a judicial foreclosure process in the state of Florida, that it's a lien theory state, and how long it could take. So it's very thoughtful, and it refers to the class lecture. Why did we refer to the lien that Larry the lender has in Florida on Betty the borrower's property as, quote, a lousy lien? We referred to the lien that Larry the lender has in Florida on Betty the borrower's property as a lousy lien because Betty the borrower still has the full bundle of rights. Although Betty hasn't paid the mortgage in full to the lender, she still has the right of possession and the rest of the bundle of rights that the lender does not have on the property. Once Betty the borrower borrows money from the lender, the mortgage is considered the lien on the property that the lender has. Just because they have this lien, it doesn't mean that they can just repossess the property right away from Betty if she defaults on the loan. The lender will still have to go through the judicial foreclosure process, which can be very lengthy. The lien means nothing in Florida because Betty the borrower can decide to not pay her mortgage for a long time and still get to live there until the lender goes through full judicial process. I wouldn't say the lien means nothing. I would say the lien is pretty lousy. The lien's pretty lousy. This is the reason it's lousy. Because the borrower gets to live there, if they live there, rent it out, possess it, do all these things, and the lender cannot come and retake possession until they go through that foreclosure process. It's costly, it's timely, and the borrower still, like this answer says, has all the stakes and has the possession. And lousy lien is not what it's called in Florida. I made it up so that people could remember that this is a lien theory state. So it's a Professor Hollander term. It's like if you go around like saying that we have lousy liens in Florida, unless you're talking to other people that they took my class, they'll know what you're talking about. Otherwise, you might have to explain to them why. Is Florida a lien theory state or a title theory state? Explain the difference. Explain why the difference matters. Florida is a lien theory state, not a title theory state. This means that property that someone purchases in Florida acts as a security for the underlying loan. The document that would place the lien on the property purchased is the mortgage. A lien theory state and a title theory state are a lot different. and it gives property owners different levels of protection. In a lien theory state, the buyer of the property holds the deed during the mortgage term, and the buyer promises to make all payments to the lender on the promissory note. So title remains with the buyer, but the mortgage acts as a lien. So you guys get that? In a lien theory state, the buyer gets the deed and all the possession, all the sticks, right? And all the lender gets is what? A lousy lien. Like when your parents go on vacation, all you get is a lousy t-shirt. All the lenders get is a lousy lien in a lien theory state. Once the mortgage is fully paid off, the lien is removed. A title theory state, the mortgage transfers title to the property to the lender, who will hold it until the borrower pays the mortgage in full. Once the borrower pays the mortgage in full, the lender will pass title to them. These are different because it changes the way and the process that a lender may repossess the property upon default. In a lien theory state, it's a longer process because the lender has to go through the judicial system and due process to repossess the property. In a title theory state, since the lender holds title during the mortgage being paid off, they don't have to go through the judicial foreclosure process. Do you have questions on that? Anybody? So it explains to me the difference, and then it explains why the difference matters. It's really important that when you answer the questions, you include the question. Somebody on the exam didn't include the questions, and then they missed questions and they missed certain parts of the questions. Do you think the Florida foreclosure process is fair to the lender and the borrower? Please explain your answer. I think the Florida foreclosure process is a lot fairer to the borrower than the lender. If the borrower defaults on the loan, they still have all the bundle of rights on the property, so the lender can't just repossess the property that quickly. So essentially, a homeowner that defaults can live in a property for 6 months to a year without paying anything, while the lender is going through the judicial foreclosure process to reclaim it. The reason for this is because Florida is a lien theory state that requires a foreclosure suit. If you notice, all these answers are very complete. They're all telling me about knowing that Florida is a judicial foreclosure state, it's a lien theory state, it requires a judicial process. So each of these answers, if any of these were on the exam, it could stand alone. Don't take pictures of answers. No.
It's my answer.
Oh, you can take pictures of your own answers. Okay. Alright, okay. The lender has to provide proof of possession of a promissory note when filing suit. Judicial foreclosures take a reasonably long time because they are similar to normal lawsuits that give the lender the burden of proof and such. Since the borrower has a right of due process based off the 5th and 14th Amendments, they have an upper hand. In Florida, and I always like 5 and 14. In Florida foreclosure process, the lender has all the burden and requirements of proving proof just like a regular suit. The reason in Florida is not as fair to the lender is because the fact that this is a lien theory state. In a title theory state where there's non-judicial foreclosure process, there's less of a burden to the lender. In those states, they don't have to go through the judicial process. Based off the speaker Andre's slides notes, he said non-judicial foreclosure means the foreclosure is handled in an administrative process by the clerk of court or county sheriff. In those non-judicial states, the foreclosure process is handled a lot differently and typically a lot faster than Florida. Do you guys think this is a thoughtful answer? Yes. Does it answer from all kind of aspects? Like, doesn't just say, I think it's not fair to the lender. Yeah, I think it's not fair to the borrower because they're losing their property. It goes into explaining the thought process, right? If you were the professor, would you give this a good grade?
Yeah.
Would you think the person thought it out? Yeah. Okay. This is an important one, number 5. Explain how the Florida foreclosure process is similar to the Florida residential landlord-tenant eviction process. Explain the rationale, public policy behind these processes. For both the Florida foreclosure process and the Florida residential landlord-tenant eviction process, they require using the judicial system. And I would say using the judicial system to take away property rights. In the Florida foreclosure process, the lender is required to follow the judicial foreclosure process, which takes a lot of time for them to repossess the property. In the Florida residential eviction process, the landlord also has to abide by the eviction process, which means they have to go through the courts to evict the tenant. In both instances, the lender and the tenant, what's actually the borrower and the tenant, have the right of due process from the 15th and 14th Amendments. The first step for a landlord trying to evict a tenant is to send the tenant a 3-day notice to notify them that they're late on their rent. For a lender, the first step is to file a complaint. So what do I like about this answer? What? 5 and 14. And you're right, Neosha. What does 5 and 14 have to do with these two processes, in your own words?
In my own words,
Yeah.
I would say that they are both important.
Why?
They're important because they're related to the rights of the people who are involved.
And those people have what?
Several rights.
What rights do they have?
They have the rights.
They have the bundle of sticks, right? They have all of those rights. So in the tenant example, all the tenant has is a leasehold interest, but that interest is still protected because it's an interest in property. So the law is saying we're not going to let a landlord come in and kick somebody out that has this interest in property unless they give them due process. Do you remember when Desi read Pitbull's song? Do you still remember it, Desi? Yes, I bet you do. What does it say? I knew my rent was going to be late a week ago. I worked my blank off. I still can't pay it though. So do you think the tenant didn't know that they didn't pay their rent? Do you think the borrower didn't know that they didn't pay their mortgage? They know that they didn't pay, but this process is giving them due process. It's giving them all sorts of notices, and it's taking months or years so that the person won't have to say that the process wasn't fair, that they didn't know. So the purpose again is that we see 5 and 14 protecting what, Neosha?
The process of the due process
Of who?
Of the
The process of who? People who have who? Who have what?
the rights.
People who have an interest in property, like one of the sticks that we talked about in class. Right. I'm forcing you to do it because if you gave me the first answer that you gave me, it would have been too general. So I want you to tell it to me specifically. How are they similar? 5 and 14, what are they doing?
They are...
Not 5 and 14, I mean the judicial process for eviction and for foreclosure.
Well, they're protecting the rights of the people who are using them. So the tenant, they want the right of possession.
They have the right of possession, right.
And then the landlord has the right to take the possession from them. If
Only
they go through the process.
The due process, right. And what about, remember when Arturo had all those sticks? And he wouldn't give them up for anything, right? He had them for months or maybe years as the commercial tenant. So what were we, as the borrower, what were we protecting there with the judicial system, the judicial foreclosure? Lien theory state.
Not possession.
Yeah, he had possession. We were protecting that. Anybody?
Yeah,
We can have a lifeline. Anybody want to be the lifeline?
Lifeline?
Yeah.
Arturo?
Well, we have James Dean. What?
Sorry, protecting a person's any interest in the property, protecting their due process. The 14 says, no state shall deprive a person of life, liberty, or property.
And 15. Yep. So what I would like to do is I would like someone to tell me in the answer why are they similar. I would like to see a reference to 5 and 14, and I would like to know what type of people these processes protect, right? And this answer was a perfect one for that. What is a promissory note? Who signs it? Is it recorded? Why does it matter in foreclosures? A promissory note is a document that is signed promising to pay back a certain amount specified to another party by a specified date. Remember, Arturo signed it on a piece of paper. The party that usually signs the promissory note is the borrower when they get a mortgage on their property to purchase. The promissory note is not recorded, but it is used as a legal instrument signed by the borrower if they default on the mortgage. The lender holds the promissory note during the term of the mortgage while it is outstanding. Once the loan is paid in full, the note is marked as paid in full and will be returned to the borrower. It is important for a lender to hold the promissory note and not lose it, because this note comes in handy when trying to undergo a foreclosure. In certain jurisdictions, like Florida, which is a lien theory state, the courts will require the lender to produce the note as evidence that they are true owners of the debt. If the lender does not have the promissory note, it will be a lot harder for them to process the foreclosure. It's a perfect answer. The only thing that would have made it more perfect, and not from my point of view, because she was able to answer everything there, but sometimes people miss, because I have A, B, C, and D there, sometimes they miss A, B, C, and D. So she could have put A, B, C, and D just to make sure she hit all the points, but she did hit all the points. But that's why I put A, B, C, and D, so that you guys on your exam can make sure you hit each of the points. Do you have any questions about that? No? Okay. Explain what the acceleration clause of the mortgage is. Explain its significance. The acceleration clause in a document gives the lender the right to require the borrower to repay the outstanding loan immediately if certain requirements are not met in a residential loan or commercial loan. This clause of the mortgage will identify the reasons. And I'll tell you also, like, you guys, I get a little nervous when I'm giving out the best answers and people aren't taking notes. Because you can use your notes in the exam. So if you don't take notes, and I see that you don't take notes, and then you didn't have an exam that was, meets the best requirements, and we go through the best answers, I don't know how to help you. We're giving you the best answers. You should be taking notes, right?
We use audio at night to do like step by step. It works, like to me.
To listen to the.
Yeah.
We used to close out the lectures. I mean, if I think that's just. I don't think that that's really learning. I think that's just typing what you're hearing, actually. Okay. I don't think that that's really actively learning. Yeah. Because then we could all just go home and I could just read them into a microphone. We don't have to be here, right? Let's see. This clause of the mortgage will identify the reasons that a lender can demand the loan payment in full. So, for example, if a borrower does not make their loan payments monthly or breaks another requirement in the clause, then the lender may require them to pay the outstanding loan immediately. When the borrower does not make their monthly mortgage payments, then they are considered to be breaching the contract, which is sufficient enough for the lender to request the acceleration. The acceleration clause helps protect the lender from the risk of the borrower potentially going into default. A lot of acceleration clauses do not trigger automatically. So if someone is late on a loan for 1 month, then most likely the lender will not invoke the acceleration clause, although they have the right to. Also, some mortgages have an acceleration clause in the case the borrower sells the property. It's called a due on sale clause. The clause is meant to protect the lender if someone sells their property and they still have a balance on their loan. So the importance of the acceleration clause is that if even one payment is not paid, the borrower, the lender, can call the whole mortgage due. And the reason that that's important is because when somebody stops paying, they're normally going to stop paying for the remainder of the mortgage. If we didn't have the acceleration clause, the lender would have to wait each month until there was a default to sue for each individual month. So the acceleration clause is a way to circumvent that legality that would make them have to wait for each month. Big Bang foreclosed on Debbie's condo, and the Miami-Dade clerk of court sold it at auction to a new buyer. Betty says that she has a right of redemption and she can get her property back. Is Betty correct? What is the right of redemption? At this point, Debbie will not be able to get her property back because there's no right of redemption in Florida. Once the property is sold at auction and the buyer receives a certificate of title, they own the property, and Betty will have to move out. Well, she has to move out once the sheriff comes, but more or less. The property has been sold, so Betty no longer has the full bundle of rights for this property. The right of redemption is the right of a homeowner in a foreclosure to essentially redeem the mortgage and keep the house by paying off the taxes or lien on the property so it doesn't get foreclosed on. The right of redemption, it's not only homeowner, it's a property owner, gives the property owner the ability to prevent foreclosure or to stop the foreclosure in some jurisdictions after the sale has occurred. The amount the current homeowner or property owner would have to pay to redeem their property is generally the full amount of the mortgage and the costs incurred in foreclosure if the pay happens before the foreclosure. So do we have a right of redemption in Florida? What?
Yeah.
Who says yes? You're wrong. You're fired. No. This answer just said there's no right of redemption. Ask Maddie. Maddie, why is there no right of redemption?
It's not like a law here in Florida.
No.
There's no right of redemption in Florida. Once your property's sold at auction, you can't come in and running say, I won the lottery, I found my grand aunt's inheritance, any of that. No.
Misunderstood.
So there's like a 10-day period if the process was wrong, but that is not a right of redemption. Right.
Isn't there like equity of redemption before it goes to auction?
This says that it was sold at auction to a new buyer. You have to read the questions. Part of this class is teaching you to slow down and read. You don't only have to read the questions, you also have to read the directions to your exam.
That is the misconception that everybody has. That Florida is totally different. And Florida have no the rights.
Well, you don't know what your rights are in any jurisdiction if you don't read, but we talked about this. So you have to read the question to answer the question, right? What is the website for the Miami-Dade auction foreclosures? This will not be on your exam. I don't ask questions this easy on your exam. No, because that's not a learning thing. That's just like, that's not a tool that you're going to use in the future, but you know, it's good to know. It's miamidade.realforeclose.com. What is it if you're in another jurisdiction? She did. If she wrote, every jurisdiction has their own process for auctions, so some can be accessed through a website and some require the buyer in person, and that's true. It looks like number 11. How many parts are there to number 11? Question number 11.
4.
There could be 5 if you count the opinion. Do you think you're going to see that question again? Yeah, I would recommend, if you do see that question again on number 11, to spend a lot of time on it. Because you will not get the full 5 points if each part is not answered carefully. Okay? And why do you think that we spent an hour writing basically the answer to question 11 on the board? An hour of your class time. Why do you think we did that? Because it's important. And so it's not crazy that that question would show up on your exam, is it? If it would, right? Right. Marlena wants to buy a property. She's looking for a steal. Marlena asks you if she should buy a foreclosure from the auction, an REO, a short sale, or a note. Please explain to Marlena the risk and benefits of each of these. Please give her your opinion on which you should purchase. So if I were going to answer this, I would explain which each one was, and then I would explain the risks, and I would explain the benefits for each of the 4, and then I would explain why I think she should do one or the other, right? That means you have to look at your notes, or you have to look at the book, or you have to look at a reading that I wrote. That's what it means. I think the question also loose about can you just listen to the recording and type exactly what I said? that answer is going to be no. Because that's going to show me that you just didn't think about it at all, and you didn't even use your own words. So really it's about using your own words. Your own words will be similar, but if it's just verbatim what I said in the lecture, it's not showing me thought was used, right? Because you might have a different thought on which one you would buy than this answer. But looking at this answer, before we even read it, looking at this answer, does it look like somebody spent time on the answer?
Yes. That's 100.
And this is a question, I think you guys in my undergrad class have had it. Maybe not. Okay, so most of my undergrad students have had this same question. And when I give this question in undergrad, the answers are like this. So you guys can do it, right? Foreclosure, this is just an example of a question, of an answer that I would like on this, right? But let's go through again. What's the structure of the answer that I would like on this? Neil should tell me what?
Explain what each one is.
Right.
Explain the risks and benefits of each.
Mm-hmm.
And then explain why you would choose the
Why you would tell Marlena to do one or the other. She says, you're at the MSIRE program. I heard you're taking this law class. Which one should I do? Right? So you're going to explain it to her. Right. So, what?
I said I got that one right.
Good for you. Good. That's good. Yes.
But it depends on her situation.
Well, that's part of the advice that you could give her. But the risk and benefits of each of the four, and telling me what they are, that you know it, and then you could tell her in your advice, you know, based on these, it depends on your situation.
Are we assuming she has the cash?
You cannot put that in your answer. Right? So, yes.
But there's not necessarily a right answer.
There's not a right answer.
Making sure that
It's making sure that you know what they each are, that you know the risk and rewards, and then knowing that, like let's say you're just in a regular class. You could take a multiple choice class on this, maybe. Or now in this class, I say I want to make sure that you know what they all are, and then based on what you know, what would you tell somebody to do? That's what I'm asking. Based on what you know, just from this class, just from what we've talked about, what we've studied, what would you do? And you can give examples that we've talked about. You could give, you know, personal examples. I don't want you going and doing research somewhere else. But that's what I'm looking for. Right. Foreclosure from and this is going to be in Florida. I'm going to add just those words in Florida here, because if you're in a different state, the auction process might be different, but I'm going to add in Florida. So foreclosure from an auction in Florida is a clerk of the court action. The risks include that these properties are truly as is, and there's no due diligence period to do the inspections. There is no financing of these properties, and certified funds for the sale are due in 24 hours. There may be claims against title and liens. The buyer receives a certificate of title and a certificate of sale and will receive a certificate of title in several days. If the borrower still has possession of the property, you have to file for a writ of possession, which can take 10 days, and then the sheriff's office will do 30 days later. Another risk is that there might be title irregularities even 30 days later. And as a new buyer, you might have to do a quiet title action, hire an attorney to do that. You might enter the unit and find all kind of damages. So she wrote, the benefit is that this may be the cheapest way to purchase property. Or you could say the benefit is that, you know, some companies do this all the time and they know what they're looking for. They know how to pro forma it to anticipate what kind of damages there might be, and then they can set a price that they would buy it at and don't get caught in the bidding war. You know, another downside is that some people get caught in a bidding war and they end up paying higher than they would like. I was in Maryland yesterday. Your professor also has different things going on. And I was actually in a car crash on my way to the airport in my Uber. Got in a car crash in the rain on the highway. It was very crazy. And I had to get another Uber in the rain on the highway to get back. But on the airplane, the person sitting next to me, because everybody tells me their real estate stories, was telling me about when they bought from auction. So, you know, it's something it's something that happens. So, but he was telling me he bought from auction and it was in good condition when he got there. So, yeah. An REO is a foreclosed property that the bank has in its inventory. Or you could tell me that an REO should be really called an REOB, a real estate owned property by the bank. Why do they call it REO? Just to confuse us. It should be called REOB, real estate owned property by the bank. The risks include that these can be extremely competitive properties with multiple offers, which means you will pay more for these properties. And you, in this case, is I guess she's telling Marlena. Or you could say the buyer. Oftentimes, the buyer will receive a special warranty deed instead of a warranty deed, where the lender only guarantees clear title for the period of time in which the bank owned the property, which means there might be a title exception coming around. There could still be claims on title. The benefits are that these property will be free and clear of all claims and liens, or if there are any, they will be disclosed during the due diligence period. You do have a due diligence period here to perform any inspections necessary, and many can be financed. You can finance REOBs normally if the bank lets you, and you do not have to worry about possession because the bank would have already taken possession prior to listing the REO. And also here, normally the liens, the outstanding liens, will have been paid off. So it will be delivered to the new buyer. The property will exchange hands without liens that could have been on there from the clerk of court auction. Questions? Yes.
You said that for REOs you get a warranty deed, not a special?
No, you normally get a special warranty deed for an REO. And I said that they're not special because they're really what they're doing is the person who's selling is, remember I call it REOB, real estate owned by the bank, and the person who's selling it is the bank, and they're making the deed special for them, so they're especially accepted from the time that they didn't own the property, right? And let's see something. And Martin, that was a good question. I meant to do it earlier. We have congratulations for Martin because he just got married. Yes, and he's working. And there was the opening of the Magic City project, which he's working on, which is $1 billion project. Yeah. I didn't mean to embarrass you, but I had on my list of things to do before. So, yeah. So see, there can be love in the time of Masters in Real Estate programs. Yes.
Do you feel like it's risk to accept that kind of deed? Like it's still risk?
I don't think it's a little bit more risky than a warranty deed. If I were buying an REO and they told me they wanted a special warranty deed, I would say, but I want a warranty deed. And then we might fight back and forth about it, and they might not give me a warranty deed, but I would probably ask for one. Yeah. A short sale. A short sale is when a lender approves the sale of a property at a price that is less than the outstanding loan balance on the property. The benefits of buying a short sale are that you may get it at a lower price since they are not as competitive as REOs. Since there is an owner still living in the property who has possession, there is a warranty deed. And the owner is selling it to you, so you get a warranty deed. You have a due diligence period to complete any necessary inspections, and you can typically finance these properties. The major risk associated with short sales is the length of time to get them approved. Remember we said they shouldn't be called short sales. What should they be called? Long sales, because they take a long time. It can take months or even a year or more, and the lender can change its mind or just not respond or approve an offer on a short sale. A note. A note is purchasing the promissory note from another lender or investor. The benefits are that the buyer can buy at a discount and renegotiate the terms with the borrower that they might be able to pay. The risks include that there are no possession rights and you have a rather weak position. The buyer of the note has a weak position. There typically is no right to inspect the property unless there was in the previous mortgage. And if you are not able to negotiate terms that the borrower is able and willing to pay, you will still have to foreclose to get possession of the property. And this says, in her opinion, the best one is really a matter of opinion and what the buyer investor is ready, willing, and able to contend with in a distressed sale. The clerk of court auction is the best option for someone who is prepared and has the resources to deal with any property. The ideal buyer has done their research on the area and understands what the cost can be to completely renovate their property. The successful bid for them is one that lets them buy the property and do any necessary renovations for less than fair market value. So she just explained why in one instance, right? It might be the which? Buying from where? Auction. Then she says, likewise, REOs are a great option for those who understand the market and have considered what they may have to pay over asking to be competitive and have the budget for renovations without going over the fair market value. Short sales can be the best investment for anyone who is either not on a set timetable for the sale to go through or has alternate living arrangements while waiting for a bank to approve the sale. I had an alternate living arrangement. I lived around the corner from the house I bought in a condo, so I could stay there for as long as I wanted while I was waiting. Since short sales are known for taking a great deal of time, they often are not very competitive at all, and a patient buyer can get a great deal. Buying notes is a great investment strategy for anyone who understands and is willing to go through the foreclosure process if renegotiating the note with the borrower is unsuccessful. The ideal investor for notes has the ability to purchase multiple notes so that they can leverage the returns on the notes that they are successfully renegotiated and the borrowers start paying against the ones and have to flip-flop. Now, this answer goes above and beyond, right? Because all that I asked was, should she buy a foreclosure from the auction, an REO, a short sale, or a note? Explain to her the risk and benefits of each. Give her your opinion on which she should purchase. So this one was very complete because it analyzed a few others, but you could just give me your opinion on which she should purchase, but it's not like, yeah, I think she should buy a short sale. Because I want the opinion backed up with thought, right? If you were the professor, would you give this answer a good grade?
Yes. 10/10.
Why?
She was very thoughtful and detailed.
And she read and she answered each part of the question, right? Yeah.
I like that she appealed to just different situations.
I like it too. You don't have to do it there, but I like it too because it showed me that she thought about it, right? Let's see. Who would consider the words and or assigns dangerous if they were placed after the tenant's name in a commercial lease? Who? Why? Why?
They can't control who should be assigned, so they want to be able to know who should be tenant.
What could happen if it was and or assigns?
It could be someone else.
And why would the landlord care so much?
It could be someone who's not as credible as the one we initially presented to.
Right. Those would be good things. What?
It may ruin the tenant mix.
It might ruin the tenant mix. Might be a competing use. It might downgrade the reputation of the building, right? Yeah. You guys are probably going to have to look at the commercial lease. Why do you think that we started our discussion of the residential landlord-tenant statute by reading the definitions of the residential landlord-tenant statute?
Some of the definitions are different than like in real life terms, so.
Maddie's killing it tonight, yeah.
They also set the tone for the rest of the document.
Well, right, in the statute, the way that the words are defined, it sets the tone for the way words will be used in a lease and what they'll mean in a lease, right? And it sets the tone for what it's going to mean in the court. It's the same, I think, when we read a session on contracts. No, we did a session on commercial leases, and we read the definitions part first. Why do we do that in commercial leases? Why do we look at the definitions part of commercial leases first?
Because they're not as regulated, right?
No, why do we look at we looked at the definitions part of the statute, and then we looked at the definition. Why are we spending so much time looking at definitions?
Because it matters.
One word can change.
Because in law, right, the words really matter. So we need to know in you know, if we're in residential tenant area, Florida Statute 83 Part 2, what do those words mean? If we are in the, you know, world of a contract or a commercial lease, what do those words mean? Because they have different definitions than we think of just on the street when we're talking with each other. Yeah.
One example could be ruling or furniture that means totally different and law. No?
Well, I think when it said furnished, it meant provided. Yeah.
Also ruling.
Or I think rent is a good example, because remember we talked about all those Forrest Gump types of rent. We don't know what kind of rent we're talking about. And in Florida Statutes 83 Part 2, if you don't define rent to include late fees and, you know, bad check fees, it won't be included in the 3-day notice rent, and you won't get paid that at the end at the eviction. So I think we're done, but we're not done. We're almost done. We're almost done. So I have a few things to show you before we're done, and then we will be done. Except if anybody has questions. Question? Okay. Oh, we're almost done. Okay, yeah. So for your exam, please, no cheating. It must be your own work. Please don't do outside research. Please don't go on Wikipedia. Please don't send me pictures of anything. None of that on your exam. I think through this class, you've seen that real estate is a team of people making things happen. And there's all kinds of laws out there and all kinds of government regulations that might be different in each jurisdiction. They might be different in each city. But these are questions. It's a framework that you should ask yourself. You should ask yourself, you know, how are property rights protected in the country that I'm going to buy in? What if somebody tries to take my property away? What's going to happen? What can I build where I'm buying? If it's a different state or if it's a different city, how high can it go? What kind of use can it be? What is the property tax cycle like? In Maryland, where I was yesterday, we pay the property taxes in advance. So we paid 2017 property taxes in 2016. So that would mean that you would have to have enough income in advance to pay the property taxes. Here in Florida, we pay them in arrears. What are the appeal rights like? Can you appeal? Or can the government just say, we need money for this, everybody's going to be taxed? So these are questions that you need to ask in every jurisdiction, right? Are there laws to protect a renter? How fast can you get an eviction out? You heard Wayne Hollow say he has evictions all the time, right? As part of the business. So these are questions that no matter if you're in Miami or if you're in another state or even jurisdiction, if you're going to get yourself involved in property, it's not a liquid asset, it's not cash. You're going to be holding it for a bit. You can't always sell it when you want to. You have to know the answers to these questions. You're the leaders of real estate. And I hope that you maintain your relationships, not just with me. And did everybody fill out that student information page? Okay, great. Because I write a blog and I stay in touch with most of my students. So I do hope that you stay in touch with me. I'm happy to do recommendations with 2 weeks advance notice, a resume, and telling me where the recommendation has to go. I cannot do last minute recommendations normally because I'm in the classroom teaching or something like that. I'm not even looking at my email that says I need a last minute recommendation. But I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to connect you with jobs. I was proud to be your teacher and to introduce you to some of my contacts. And I hope that we keep in touch, but we're not done. And let me know if you have deals in countries where you know, or you want real estate education. From where you are. So then I have a few other things. Let me see if it's over here. Yes. So I have just a few things to keep you in mind. The more you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go. And that's by Dr. Seuss. Everybody knows read is my favorite four-letter word. Dr. Seuss went to Dartmouth, just like I did, and sometimes the best thing is to keep it simple. And then I have a little poem that I wrote for you too, Dr. Seuss inspired. Congratulations, today is your day. You're off to great places, you're off and away. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. You're on your own, and you know what you know, and you are the guy or gal who'll decide where to go. You'll ace your exam, it's an open book. It'll help you remember all the good lessons you took. Real estate law was not supposed to be fun, but you found a way to enjoy it and get some sun. Thank you.